When you're only in love with the vision, you're in love with the delusion. As a first-time entrepreneur, you think you need to control everything. And control is not your aim. Influence is your aim. And you can most control and influence your responses. I had gone through these 4 businesses as well as, doing freelance work and supporting entrepreneurs for a couple of years. The best way to learn is to teach. The world will send you signals of what is right for you. And if you ignore them, it will send you louder and louder and louder signals until you've ignored it so much, it just backhands you across the face because it is so important and you just can't ignore it.
I started the show and I continue the show to bring valuable conversations to small business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, startups, and the like. Conversations about marketing, about networking, about business development, sales, finance, leadership, and all the things that go with running a business to try and move the needle away from the high failure rate that business owners experience, much higher than it needs to be if you take the time to learn the basics, learn the fundamentals, and learn from the guests that we bring on the show. It's incumbent upon the business owner who wants to be successful to find the information that's out there to learn. So we hope that the guests that you hear and the conversations we have are valuable and help you in your business and hopefully help us move the needle a little bit. If you have any suggestions, please write the show, introduce us to guests that we'll have on the show. How can you help us, though, continue to help you? First, please subscribe to the channel. The more subscribers we have, the more eyeballs we get, the more things we can bring to the show, the more resources we'll have to bring you quality content. Like us, if you listen to the audio version, leave us a 5-star review wherever you can. If you follow our posts, if you see our posts, please share those posts, share the content, and link back to our law firm website, which helps us to continue our SEO marketing and grow our firm and help small business owners. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for being a listener, and I want to thank you for staying a listener. All right, Seven. So thanks for joining me. Where are you? You're in a later time zone, aren't you?
I am. I'm in London in the UK.
There you go.
5 or 6 hours behind you, or
Yeah,
ahead of
very
you even.
nice. I got a lot of friends over in London. I'm not in it so much, but I used to be on a like a Zoom networking thing every Friday, which I guess was happy hour for them, but it was like middle of the day here. And I always end up with something, like a work in the middle, like 1 o'clock. So it's always hard to get on, but I have a lot of friends over there. So, yeah. So thanks for coming on the show. Why don't we start with, your background and, your schooling? Because I know you mentioned you dropped out of college and you're very successful after that, ups and downs. And then in the second half of the show, we'll take a break for commercials in the middle. And then we can talk about what you're doing now and all the stuff that's going on. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Epic, Mitch. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No
I mean,
problem.
yeah, kind of as you mentioned, I guess I'll go back a little bit even before then, give you a very high level of my life story without being too boring about it.
Good.
Was born in Los Angeles, California, so over on the other side of the U.S. from where you are now, I believe, and was born into a challenging circumstance. Lost one of my parents when I was very young, and my father, my remaining parent, we really struggled financially, dealt with homelessness,
Oof.
houselessness, more loss, lots of
Yeah.
challenges.
Wow.
And that for a while was, really traumatizing into my teenage years, etc. As I'm sure you can imagine, that
Right.
left a heavy burden on my shoulders. For some reason, it also instilled in me this really radical desire to make the world a better place. Obviously, that's very woolly, and for a long time, I was very naive about that.
Yeah.
What I think that unconsciously gave me was this desire to move into entrepreneurship. And when I started, I didn't realize that. So let's now fast forward to my university time. At this
Yeah.
point, I'm in the UK, and I drop out after my first year. Very stereotypical university dropout to
Right.
go into entrepreneurship. Co-founded an agency business where my co-founder and I were bringing in lots of young people from challenging backgrounds in London into companies that wanted to hear from younger people. And this was when hearing from Gen Z was starting to become cool, maybe a decade ago or something
Right.
like that.
Right. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so ended up working with Nike, Nando's, AKQA, Sports Direct, Superdry, some of the biggest companies here in the UK. And so that had its share of successes for a little while. And again,
And
the
what were you
reason
doing?
why,
Was that like what you
so we
said you
would
didn't you
we
dropped out of school, so then all these
yeah.
companies wanted to hire you?
Not right away. So both before and afterwards, we were doing lots of outreach and pitching to them. And my co-founder was actually an influencer. So I was in the
Okay.
ops on the background. Now, this maybe will come out of our second half of the
Okay.
conversation, but at the time, as a result of lots of those childhood challenges, I had really intense social anxiety. I knew
Okay.
I wanted to make the world a better place. And at
Yeah.
the time, my way of doing that was by delivering these kind of programs, these services for our clients that were helping young people get heard and helping them get opportunities.
Okay.
Actually, what we often found was sometimes these companies would hire them. And
Hmm.
so this is a young person's first job in the BBC or on a radio channel, something like that. And they're really thankful for these opportunities. One of our programs, something like 60% of the participants actually got hired by the client. So we knew we were making a little bit of an impact, but that was in our tiny world. And
Right.
actually, the reason I got into this is because at the time, I read a book that taught me all about social entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean non for profit. It means how
Right.
do I make the world a better place through my
Yeah. There's
sustainable
plenty of
business vehicle?
for-profit social enterprises. Yeah.
Uh,
Now so you were, it was kind of like a PR company, right? You were doing public relations and getting these people on on different things and promoting
It
them.
was actually more market research. We
Okay.
did start to do more marketing related things, helping people understand young people, but we were getting them in there to understand what young people wanted most from either a marketing or a talent perspective,
So they were like
because these
focus groups for
organizations
Nike or whatever. And they were like, oh, what's
exactly.
this thing? Okay, got it. That
Exactly.
makes
Youth
sense.
advisory programs, these ways of getting them to really understand what that market wanted. This
Okay.
was me super in my career. Didn't know what we were doing. We were
Right.
just able to deliver through brute force and
Right.
sheer willpower.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Okay. So then, yeah. How did it develop from there?
So over the years, we ended up working with those clients and we had some successes. We probably didn't make as much money as we wanted, but we got into these clients. We made okay money. And then COVID rolled around. So we did this for a number of years and then COVID rolled around. Now, at this point, we're actually not enjoying it very much anymore. And then moving into the online space, we were enjoying that even less.
Yeah.
Some of our clients were still happy to work with us. So, for example, but this was before Facebook was Meta. We were working with Facebook doing some online versions of our programs, but we weren't enjoying it. We found clients were a bit unsure about budgets. This is your
Yeah.
classic
Right.
COVID
Sure.
stuff.
Don't know
So we
what's going
wound it up. Now, just before that, I was doing some work and eventually came on to co-found a kind of social good tech startup,
on. Right.
working in the homelessness space, which, as I've
Okay.
alluded to, was really important to me. But the business model didn't work. I didn't realize that at the time. None of us did.
Okay.
So left that behind because we were trying to make it work. I was living for a little while in Glasgow, up in Scotland. That's where that business was based. So I left that business behind. Then went and joined a fashion tech startup. And that was where some of the craziness started to happen, where we were working really hard. We were aiming to raise quite a bit of money. The team just really wasn't right. Everything from our skill sets to the way the egos got
Yeah.
in the way and the way the egos got involved and the team fighting and the disagreements and everything about the team was all wrong.
Now, this was like
So
wearable tech.
this was actually AR tech. So we're
Okay.
seeing this more now, but it is still isn't popular. Where you'll do a 360 scan of your body that could go into something like an AR VR avatar. Then you see the clothes moving onto your body.
Got
And what our unique selling point there was, we wanted to do this for your small Shopify stores, right? Bigger stores that have bigger budgets are we're looking to implement these things. I think with the way AR has kind of slowed down, it's maybe a little bit less now actually, but these are things I'd expect to come into the market. But for the smaller shops, right? Shopify stores, independent sellers,
right.
brands, they're unlikely to access this tech unless it gets really accessible. So we were looking to give them these tools to implement that in every single Shopify store and other small e-commerce
So you could
store
kind of try on your clothes, see what it looks like on you, just
before
like these
purchasing.
glasses, right, online. Yeah,
Exactly,
got it. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, and it wasn't
Um,
accessible to them. If you're a big company, you can develop your own stuff, right? I understand.
Yeah. Exactly. So we wanted to essentially make this accessible for lots of small businesses out there, and the team just was not able to pull this off, unfortunately. Things kind of came to a head after a lot of one of the original co-founders. So I joined an existing co-founding team. One
Okay.
of the co-founders, he was used to working for bigger companies with bigger budgets
Yeah.
and had quite a bit more experience in corporate than I did, in the world of work than I did. I was
Right.
younger than he was by a decent margin, and so he didn't like that I had some entrepreneurship experience. It was like, well, this doesn't work in entrepreneurship.
Right. He
When
wasn't
you
really a
have these
bootstrapper, right?
Exactly. When you
Yeah.
have these bigger budgets, it just doesn't work the same way.
Right. You can throw money
And
at it. Right. Exactly.
so he was very unhappy with some of the suggestions I put forward, and at some point it kind of got heated, and at some
Yeah.
point I just had to draw the line. It was like, there's too much ego here. I'm not happy with the way I'm being treated. Like, we're just not getting anything done.
Yeah. No.
Co-founder issues are one of the biggest reasons that
Yeah, I
startups
mean,
will fail,
I
and
think that a
this
lot
was
of
one
people
of
don't
them.
realize that. You hear about a great idea and they're like, I don't understand. It was a great idea. Could have, but sometimes teams just don't work. Like you have a great idea that you just
Yeah.
can't get off the ground because you got the wrong people, and everybody breaks up, and you go on to something else. You're like, you know what, I just don't have the stomach for this anymore, and I don't want to
Yeah.
do it, or it's not my idea, or whatever it is, and it falls apart. So there's a lot of those. You're right. That's a big
Yeah.
reason for you know startup failures and
And you know what?
struggles. You know,
Exactly what you just described was one of the challenges I went through. Is I My intuition was telling me something is not working here.
right,
But I kept going, but between us we've got all this experience and we have
right,
all this network and
yeah,
we're really close to raising some money and this
right.
and that, and
A great
I just
idea.
kept giving
Yeah.
myself all these excuses.
Of
Yeah, it's a
course.
great idea and people like it,
Right.
and
We got to make this work. This can't be the reason, but it is a big
exactly.
reason. Yeah. I mean, because even if you, okay, fine. So you push yourself through it, you stick with it, right? You stay in the marriage for how bad it is, and you just keep going. And then it just doesn't, it never gets better. It's always painful to do, even if you're making progress. I guess that hides a lot of things, right? If you're making progress, you're getting a little bit of traction, you put up with a lot of stuff. But, look, there's successful startups too that have broken up because the people just couldn't deal with each other anymore. I don't care how much money I'm making, how successful I am. I don't want to see Seven ever and ever again. I don't want to wake up in the morning, walk to an office and see his face. And that's the reality of human relations. I mean, it's just the reality of things. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So that must have been what happened here, right? It just
It's exactly what
didn't come
happened.
together. Yeah.
At some point we just had to face the writing that we weren't the right people to make this happen,
Yeah.
which in a way was great experience. Being
Yeah.
able to admit that to yourself and still get back up and keep going and doing other things. I mean, that's I think in a way that taught me more about myself than anything else.
Yeah.
How do I respond to what felt like earth-shattering amounts of ego? How do I accept that this is a space where if I want to make the world a better place through entrepreneurship, that I'm going to have to deal with people's egos? And eventually I started working to support other entrepreneurs after that business, which meant work with VCs here in
Yeah.
London. London's VC ecosystem is still fairly new. Europe's in general isn't very strong. Working with a lot of these people who raise money, people
Yeah.
who are trying to raise money. And again, it's a lot of ego. Had I not had this really hard lesson about how to deal with people's egos, even just the awareness that it's going to be present, I don't know if I'd still be here.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of really good ideas that you and I shouldn't be doing.
Mm,
I mean, you can fill up a room with them. And I also think that as you learn, and I talk a lot about leadership, and I've talked to a lot of leadership coaches and people in business who have worked at big corporates and small companies, whatever. And even at the smaller level, leadership becomes even more important, right? You think of it as like, the big J&Js of the world, and you're standing up on a stage and talking to your employees. But, being able to lead a group and get them to work together and feel supported and don't feel like this person's trying to, slight me, whatever, is a real skill. And a lot of times when it comes to VCs and raising money, and I'm sure you found this, right? They're more investing in you than they are in the company. There is no company. It's a concept. It's a, are you going to pull this off and get people to follow you and, feel empowered and, do all the right things that a really good team does. And I think that that's like one of the main ingredients to success, tech or not tech, but in the entrepreneur space, is the ability to lead a team to get these guys to work together, to feel and to get them to feel like they want to work together, right? That they're achieving something, they're getting something out of this. And if not, people just give up. It doesn't matter how good the idea is. It doesn't matter.
You know what I think is really interesting is that I think this is even more challenging in Europe.
Yeah, you think?
For every 5 million in U.S. venture capital, there's 1 million over here,
Yeah,
and the investors here are even more risk averse. So you need, generally speaking, to have more traction. In
right.
the U.S., you can get a multiple time founder who's gone, I know what I'm doing, but also I have no plan, or I have this semblance of a plan, but it's never going to work. It's probably going to change a whole bunch. Over here, you can have all this experience, all this knowledge, and people are still really risk averse. So a team gets together, and as a result, something about the European culture is everyone is more sure of themselves
Right.
and simultaneously less risk averse. And by sure of themselves, I don't mean for a good reason. So
Right.
um,
Overly
I'll get a
confident,
lot of
maybe.
yes, exactly. I'll get a lot of VCs saying to me, "Hey, I'm working with a second-time founder, someone who successfully raised money before. Maybe the business then went on to fail, or they sold it for a small amount or something,
Right.
and they're not willing to accept their own responsibility in why it didn't work. You'd expect someone to say,
Oh, yeah.
"These are the reasons it didn't work.
Yeah.
I did these things
It
wrong.
was
I
me.
learned these things." And this is the thing is you are constantly being judged for your trustability, your trustworthiness. Being unable to take that responsibility immediately makes you less trustworthy. Or maybe it's the reverse even. The more responsibility you take, the more trustworthy you
Yeah.
seem.
There's no question
And
about it.
and here in the UK, at least, I can only really speak for London's market specifically, but London's market captures a lot of the European market.
Right.
Um, Entrepreneurs, successful or otherwise, are often blaming external conditions. The market wasn't good enough. There wasn't enough funding. People didn't believe in me. It's really
Right.
challenging for people like me. And some of those things, while they might be technically true, it becomes a yes and situation. You're familiar
Right.
with the yes
Of
and
course.
concept, right? So
But
multiple truths can be correct at the same time. So yes, certain things are challenging, and here's what I could have done better as
right.
well. And so ego almost takes a different form as a result, because instead of just because people's egos are all about protecting their self image to themselves. I
Right.
think
It's
there's a
natural. It's
British
human. Right.
I
It's
think
human.
it's natural. I think there's a British culture thing of
You think
don't
it's
don't
very
be
funny.
judged, right?
Yeah.
So the British will constantly say this about themselves and to themselves and with each other is, here standing up, poking your head above the parapet is not a good thing.
Right.
The entire school system, the entire work system, the university system, all of it teaches you to do
Keep
the
your head
same thing
down.
as everyone
Right.
else. And
Yeah.
in America is the same, right?
Yeah.
To an extent, but you've got a culture of entrepreneurship,
Right.
especially in places like Los Angeles, where I'm
Right.
from, New
Silicon
York, where you
Valley.
are.
Right. Exactly. New York.
Exactly.
Yeah. Big cities. Miami.
Whereas for all the entrepreneurship in London, it
Yeah.
hasn't overcome the greater British and European cultures of, don't stand out too much.
Yeah.
And that's been a real challenge, I think, in this ecosystem. So you have to overcome your own ego and the entire culture of
Right.
going the normal way, and the fact that there's less venture capital here, and the fact that those venture capitalists are much more risk
More
averse,
conservative. Yeah.
which means if you do break through, you're amazing. Like, you must
Right.
have been amazing at it.
Yeah.
There's a saying that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I disagree. I think if you
You
can
think in
make it in
London?
London, you can
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
anywhere.
So I guess you think that the ecosystem in the United States, venture capital angels, things like that, are a little bit more tolerant about things. We have situations where we have blank check companies where they just
Mm,
write a check to you because you've been successful, and they say, Seven, go out and find us a business. And that's hard to do. But I think the shortcoming with blaming other people and not being able to take accountability raises an issue in the mind of the people that are investing in you, because if you can't recognize that your shortcoming, the things that you can control, and
hmm
you think it's all these other people,
hmm
well, you're basically saying that I can't control whether this is successful the next time because it's all everyone else.
Yes.
So who would invest in you if that's the case? If you instead say, This is what we did wrong. This is what I learned. This is how I want to do it different. These are all these things that I control because I know what my shortcomings are and I've grown as a person. I think that actually instills more confidence in the people that are, putting their money on the table. And I think people don't realize that. These people that
It
are,
absolutely does.
yeah,
Most of our relationships are built with people who are unconsciously judging us all of the time.
yeah,
Everything from the first impression to how we hold and carry ourselves.
right.
People can tell if you feel comfortable and confident, or if you've got this imposter syndrome and you're shrinking, you don't know how to make the sale. People can tell, and
Yeah,
so much of it's unconscious. But something like 75% of people who make, well, we all make first impressions. Something like 75% of those first impressions are actually accurate. People are really good at figuring other people out. And if you think about an investor or any important, a potential co-founder, an experienced entrepreneur who's interested in you as the potential co-founder or the first team member, the first
right.
hire, they're going to be even better because they just this discernment is something they're doing all of the time. And I learned the hard way that people could see right through
Yeah.
through me. And
Nowadays, yeah, they can.
and in a way, I'm also really thankful for the ability to see through other people a little more. Often now, I'm working with people on their ability to communicate themselves, how they hold themselves, and I can tell if they feel confident, if they hold space and have presence, or if they're really unsure of themselves. And that's everything from little bits of body language I can pick out to how they respond to certain questions. What did you do wrong? Well, this was hard, and that was hard, and this didn't.
Right.
Or
Not taking
are
any
you
accountability
going,
for anything, right?
exactly,
Exactly.
all of this was on me? The answer is
Right.
always going to be something in the middle, right? Buddhists
Yeah,
call this the middle way, where the answer is never one of two extremes. All
of course.
dichotomies are false dichotomies.
Right.
But to be able to recognize the part you had to play, as well as the parts outside of your control and what you could have done about them, shows that you're able to expand that circle of influence. I'm sure
Yeah,
you're super familiar with Stephen Covey's circle of
of
influence.
course.
We need to, as entrepreneurs, we think, well, as a first time entrepreneur, you think you need to control everything. And
Right.
control is not your aim. Influence is your aim.
Yeah, there's no
And
question about it.
you can most control and influence your responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you obviously grew a lot, you learned a lot from that experience. You took that with you to the next thing that you did. So now you are, you know, more aware of a lot of the shortcomings of a bad team. So
Yeah,
where'd
well,
you go from there?
I'm gonna make myself sound even more incompetent by telling you that I didn't learn my lesson.
Oh, nice.
I started moving into the entrepreneurship sort of education and support space, running
Okay.
an accelerator, working with VCs, helping train new entrepreneurs. Got myself accredited in hypnosis as a suite of tools to work with entrepreneurs on their inner world, as well as that kind of knowledge and experience I had on the external world.
Okay.
However, um, a couple of years into doing this, I joined the co-founding team of a startup events company. So
Okay.
working with a new startup, this is the fourth thing I had now gone into co-founding, and things went really well for about 3 months, and then things started going not so well for the second 3 months.
Okay.
And I didn't learn my lesson the first time
You're
around. I
running
thought I
events
had,
for an industry or
for
for people?
entrepreneurs. So
Okay.
we were running events that brought together entrepreneurs and
Okay.
investors, and we're looking for ways of facilitating greater amounts of investment and just changing the ecosystem. I think things are really stale here for quite a while because London's ecosystem is a lot younger than anywhere in the US as far as entrepreneurship
So it
is
was like a
concerned.
trade show that you were creating. You weren't doing an event for a company.
I would call them, yes, that's correct. I would
Right.
call them smaller networking events, though we did start designing and delivering bigger, much more ecosystem changing events that were more like trade shows with sponsors and
Right.
stages, pitching stages,
But you had to
investment
market it.
opportunities.
You had to get the people there. You had to get
Yeah.
people signed up for
All
table
all the
events, all that
things.
stuff. Got it.
All
Okay.
the things.
So it's
At
your
this
product.
point,
Got it.
exactly. And at this
Okay.
point, I probably had built, including this one, maybe three communities of entrepreneurs ranging from 1 to 6,000 people. So I'd
Okay.
done this a few times now, is building these communities of entrepreneurs and running events, products, services for groups of entrepreneurs.
Okay.
The mistake I made was it was actually a lot of things. The reason things came to a head with this company was because my co-founder and I had a lot of intuitive feelings and red flags about this, okay? But once again, similar to that last business, I had ignored a whole bunch of it.
Right.
Where my co-founder very clearly liked this thing that he had started,
Yeah.
didn't love the idea of a co-founder kind of telling him what to do or challenging him on certain things. And eventually, when it came time for the share agreements and the
Yeah.
contractual stuff,
Yeah.
was not comfortable giving
I've
shares up,
been
and
in that
everything fell
situation
apart from
too.
there.
When the pen hits the paper, they change their whole. But your
Hmm.
mind has a way. Your brain has a way of saying this is why this is different than the
Yes.
last situation I was in, and you continue to repeat your mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. Is I'd repeated a bunch of mistakes. This time the only difference was that I was really confident about the vision and my role to play in it.
Okay.
This is actually a second problem though, which is that so at the beginning of working together, we go through make our big vision board, we write out all the things you want to be doing, the 5-year plan, this big
Yeah.
grand vision for these different areas of business, different products,
Right.
spin out,
The whole business plan,
businesses,
basically,
the whole thing. And I
live.
was super excited about it.
Yeah.
3 or so months in, we deliver this really big product, this really big event. That was amazing. And I'm realizing now that we're really focused on just running this big event, and it's not actually the vision we created. But I kept going into it and didn't say enough about it because I fell in love with this vision we had created. We had different tech products spun off of this. We had uh, um, investor related products and services, as well as things for
These
the
are
entrepreneurs,
ideas
as
at the
well as things, as well as, yes,
time. Right.
exactly, as well as like franchise ideas. We had so many ideas. We had
Right.
one core product which worked and it made money. We had all these different things, and we stopped looking at any of those other things on that vision. Then the team issue started to wheel in, had started to roll in, but I was still super focused on this vision. I was so excited
Right.
about
Because you
this
had the
vision.
forest, but now you're stuck in a tree, and you want to go
Exactly.
out and tend to the forest, and nobody else wants to come with you.
There was a slight challenge, which was exactly that, which was A, I was the only one looking at that whole forest,
Right.
and B, that I was in love with that forest, but not that tree, to use your analogy.
So you're
In
like
other
putting up
words,
with this event, thinking, okay, it'll get us to where we're going.
exactly.
Right.
What I realized is I was only in love with that vision, not the day to day. I didn't like the day to day. I didn't really, well, not that I didn't like, but I didn't really care about the day to day. I wasn't that
Right.
passionate about it. I was passionate about this long term vision.
Right.
The vision doesn't exist in the now, it exists in the
No,
future.
and it doesn't come about if without the day to day that gets you there.
Exactly.
Assuming it's
Which
the right
means because I was only in love with the vision, I was in love with something that didn't exist,
right.
which means I was in love with a delusion.
Right. You
When
you
you're
were
in
you
love,
like the whole vision of what it could be. You just didn't want to be on the
yes,
train to get there. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
When you're only in love with the vision, you're in love with the delusion.
Right.
And so I had two simultaneous problems. My co-founder and I had a relationship breaking down. I had quit some other contracts I had to build this business, which was another reason why I was like all invested in it.
Right.
But I wasn't liking the day to day, and this vision wasn't going to be achieved anyway because things weren't working out with the co-founder, and then this share stuff happened, and so everything broke down all at once. Left old contracts behind, then this business broke down. Suddenly, I
Right.
went from doing a bunch of things all at once and seeing lots of traction, reputation, a little bit of money, these things, suddenly into, oh, everything's collapsed all at once
Right.
and it is all my fault. What the heck's going on?
Right. Yeah.
And
Tends
that
to be like,
sort
did
of
they say
drew a
that
line.
expression in London? And when it rains, it pours. Do they say that?
Absolutely.
That
Yes,
tends to be what
exactly.
happens. Things kind of they're all built on a house of cards, and you don't realize it.
But the way that I view this is that this was exactly what was meant to happen, because this sort of drew a line under my entire career up till that point.
Okay.
I had gone through these 4 businesses, as well as doing freelance work and supporting entrepreneurs for a couple of years. The best way to learn is to teach, right? So doing this teaching as it results of the experience that I had, and did some soul searching after that because everything fell apart,
Mm-hmm.
and realized this has fallen apart for a reason. It
Yeah.
made me reflect, oh, here's what I was doing wrong. Here are all these things that I should have known that I was ignoring. Here's the fact that I wasn't actually loving the day to day and I was only in love with the vision. okay, so what am I actually here to do?
Right.
What am I meant to do day to day? Where am I actually valuable to the world? And
Right.
I wasn't asking myself these questions until everything came crumbling down. And in hindsight, that was exactly what was meant to happen. What I
Right.
often say is the world will send you signals
Yeah.
of what is right for you. And if you ignore them, it
See
will
them,
send you
right?
louder and
Yeah.
louder and louder signals
Until you
until
get it.
you've ignored it so much, it just backhands you across the face because it is so important and you just can't ignore it. And for me, that backhand, that unignorable proof, undeniable proof was everything collapsed. Okay, what am I doing now? And I had to
Right.
be really honest with myself about that.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to, you know, a lot of colleagues of mine say this: when there are no failures, right? There's
Hmm.
just growth experiences. There's growing things that you grow as a human being. But you're right. You got to see the signs. What's that joke where the guy's on the roof of his house in a flood and a storm, and a rescue boat comes by, and he says, "No, God will provide. I'm not going to take the boat." And then a helicopter comes, and God will provide. I'm not going to do that. And then finally he drowns, and he's up in heaven and he's talking to God, and he goes, "God, I thought you were going to provide for me." He said, "I did. I sent you a boat and I sent you a helicopter. What more do I have to do?" And I think you're right. We
Yeah.
have to kind of, I mean, part of that is knowing ourselves, and part of it is learning from, and some of that you cannot learn unless you experience it and maybe fail a
Mm.
little bit, right? Learning about, yeah, what kind of people do I work well with? What kind of things where is my skill set? And I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of people, especially small business owners, maybe less in the VC space and the tech space because you're really forced, you got money on the table. But a lot of people, I think they don't really evaluate what they're good at, what they're not good at, things that they
Mm.
shouldn't be doing, and things that they should be doing. And they try to do everything themselves. And it leads to a lot of struggle and a lot of
Yeah.
failure.
There's an example that comes to mind. There's one entrepreneur I knew a few years ago. She was building a B2C app for young people in the health space.
Okay.
Now, because it was a B2C app and it was for young people, to market it, she started making TikToks. But the TikToks weren't very good, and it wasn't actually, even if it had attracted more young people to it, wouldn't have made much money because where she was making her money would actually have been through B2B contracts.
Right.
So the, young people would use it B2C, but it would be
Yeah, they're
through
not going to
B2B
pay for
contracts.
it. Right. They're young.
So she was wasting all this time making these TikToks, wasting all this time on the wrong
They
platform,
weren't
the
even
wrong
good,
thing.
you said.
And they weren't even good. So even if they were good, would it have been a good use of time? But actually
Right.
they weren't even good. So it made no difference.
Right.
And eventually she stopped
Failed.
building this business.
Of course.
But she just ran out of
I mean,
steam
she's
and ran
building
out of
a
money,
community and
probably.
getting a following of people that aren't going to be customers, right?
Yeah,
Basically, use
pretty
the data.
much. And so we assume that we have this linear, sometimes we have this linear assumption, right? It's for young people B2C. Oh, they're on TikTok. Let me go on TikTok.
Right.
And
Of
it's this
course.
linear logic, but it isn't actually very intelligent use of your time. And instead going, I'm not good at social media. I'm not good at TikToks. I don't really want to learn this. If you do, great. But I don't enjoy this and I don't want to learn it. My skill set's better doing something else in the business.
Yes.
And it's actually more logical to go for where the money is. Then screw that and don't do the don't make the TikToks, don't make the marketing materials, do something else instead because you have to prioritize with your limited time and budget. That makes so much more sense. But again, this is a maybe even an ecosystem thing here in London. A lot of people fall into that trap because there aren't that many successful entrepreneurs relative to the US here, especially in the digital and tech space,
Yeah.
to say, hey, look, that's a massive fat waste of time. You need to stop and you
Right.
need to refocus and reprioritize. A way I love looking at this that I'll often advise people is to use a principle I learned about from Elon Musk a few years ago. I heard he has this principle where he basically says,
Very popular,
take
by the way,
your,
now in the United
I
States.
know, very popular, I know, but the principle is what's important.
Right. Of course.
Take your 5 to 10 year timeline. So let's say your 5 year timeline and ask yourself what you need to do to shrink it right down to 6 months. Now, the answer is never going to be work 12 times harder
Right.
because unless you're doing almost nothing now, then that can't be the answer,
Right.
right?
No, you
So
can't
what it's
sustain that.
actually about is prioritization, cutting out all the stuff you don't need. And that's one of the things Elon Musk is famous for. Well, in his successful business world is what he's not famous for.
Right.
Is removing all the crap you don't need to do, right? When people would come and say, hey, we need to do things XYZ way, he'd go, why? Do we need to do it that way? He'd question all of these assumptions. And that kind of ruthless cutting is one way of prioritizing. There's something I learned more recently, which is that the word priorities, plural,
Mhm.
didn't actually exist in the English language until
Interesting.
very recently.
Okay.
We only had priority, singular. And so the way I think about this is, let's say you have 3 or 4 really big priorities in your life, okay?
Right.
Your children, right, are probably priority number 1, for
Right.
example. You know, your spouse, priority number 2, your business, priority number 3, for example, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, you have multiple priorities and they're all important and they're in that order. So what you do is you say, in this moment, what is out of that list the priority? So yes, it's multiple priorities, but not all at once.
Right.
So for example, the kids are at school right now.
Yeah.
Me and my partner are both at work right now.
Right.
So my priority is my business and nothing else.
That
And
makes
if the
sense.
school calls me and says, "Hey, your kid is sick," my priority in the
Change.
moment shifts.
Well, it's
Exactly.
like multitasking. Nobody really multitasks. You
Exactly.
just do one thing, you
Exactly.
stop, you start the other one, you go back, you're moving around all the time. I understand. There really is one priority at a given moment in time. It can't be
Exactly.
multiple ones because you can't do it. All right. Well, why
Exactly.
don't we do this? We're a little bit over time, but let's take quick commercial break for the sponsors that are no longer supporting us. We're going to be changing that soon. And then we'll come back. We'll talk about what you're doing now and all the message that you're sending and the things that you're doing. Does that make sense?
Epic. Sounds good.
All right. I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, Evenue. It's the all-in-one platform for small businesses. So maybe you're getting your calendaring from one software and you're invoicing from another, and you are marketing through another one, running your email system and all those types of things, docu-signing, documents. Evenue is a platform that we use as one of our sponsors to run our entire business. So we take all those tools and it merges them all into one. And there's other features like auto payments and integrations with QuickBooks, social media marketing management, and funnels that'll really allow you to run your whole business. So if you want to learn more about those tools that we use, visit evenue.com, EVONUE.com to learn more. There's also a link in the show notes. And be sure to tell them that the Accidental Entrepreneur referred you. This podcast is brought to you by our affiliate sponsor, iEmployee. iEmployee is a virtual assistant service that hires almost anyone for any role in your company right out of the Philippines. Most roles range from $7 to $9 an hour for highly skilled and experienced VAs. And whether you need an executive assistant, social media manager, video editor, customer service, sales, you name it, they have it. We use iEmployee for our VA services, from editing and promoting the podcast to all the PR and promotion of our law firm. iEmployee acts as a virtual field supervisor on the back end with live video monitoring and reports on a daily basis with screenshots of your VA's workday, and along with complete HR and payroll duties. No more paying for overpriced and underqualified workers. There's a link in the show notes to get a 1-week free trial, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. All right, Seven. So we're back. Yeah, why don't we talk about what you're doing now? You can tell the audience, and then we can get more, because I love all the philosophical stuff, because of, people say, oh yeah, that happened to me. I didn't realize I was doing this, or I was, so those are all good discussions. But let's hear what you're doing now.
Yeah, epic. So to that point, I realized once I realized what I wasn't doing, the question, what I wasn't doing right, the question is
Right.
what should I be doing and what is
Yeah,
right?
always.
And in the same way that the world sends you signals of what's wrong, the world sends you signals of what might be right. So for me, those signals were people saying, "You're great at getting me to open up. You're amazing at holding space for me. Thank you for helping me make this kind of breakthrough or change." People, and especially these days now, I'm hearing people say the same words, which is, "Man, you're so good at this. You're so good at this," which usually come from personal or professional development, life
Yeah,
related
sure.
conversations.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that's very high level, so I'll give you some more specifics there. After everything kind of fell apart, I did some soul searching and stumbled on I say stumbled on. I think I knew for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and finally had the confidence to say, what is right for me is to be helping other people discover and cultivate the greatest self leader that they are. I believe all of us are the leaders of our lives. We all have the leader within us, the person we are meant to be more of, that we can discover and cultivate. The person that, even if we're not entrepreneurs, we can be in our lives, right? A mother is a leader of herself, her life, her household, her child, right? So we are all leaders all around our lives. And as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, because the core group of people with my career especially are entrepreneurs that I work with are entrepreneurs. I believe an entrepreneur is just another word for a leader. And sometimes I'll write this
Yeah.
out on a workshop slide. Entrepreneur equals leader, like an
Yeah.
equation. A leader isn't always an entrepreneur. I'd argue a good leader is entrepreneurial. What
Yeah.
that means is that a good entrepreneur is a good leader.
Right.
And so I moved into the space of essentially doing two things: training and content, mainly through my own podcast as well, which is why I love speaking to podcasters, because you
Yeah.
get it and you get
Of
how
course.
powerful this can be. Um, Now, that isn't just around entrepreneurship, it's around personal and professional development. What I do is I speak to and work with ambitious professionals to get everything they want to get, which I know is very vague, but the way I do that is mainly focused on energy. I believe that we all can cultivate greater levels of energy within us so we show up as energetically as possible.
Right.
Every relationship you have is an energetic exchange. Every
No
time
question
you
about it.
go and public speak, pitch, sales, negotiation, which are some of the main practical things I work with, especially entrepreneurs on. If you show up tired and defeated and deflated with imposter
Of
syndrome,
course.
you're not going to get anywhere, no matter how good your
No,
product
because you're not
is.
going to excite the people. You meet people
Exactly.
all the time and you're like, I just like him. I get a good vibe from him. He's got a good
Yes.
attitude. He's excited. It feels right. And even though
Yes.
I'm always one to say, be careful. Don't just go with your gut. We
Mm.
definitely attract or, well, we always attract. It's either a negative attraction or a positive attraction,
Yes.
but
That's a great way of
right.
putting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think that some people that are worried about things and they are negative and they got their guard up and whatever, they think that they're keeping away the bad things, but that's not the way life works. We only attract. So
Mm.
I'm not a PhD scientist, but I'm telling you from experience, we only attract. So if we are, negative and we're worried and we're concerned and we have our guard up, we will attract those things whether we like it or not. If we're outgoing and open and thoughtful and nice, that's who we will attract. That's people, good looking people who are looking to date, let's say, right,
Hmm.
always are less attractive if they have a bad attitude and have that type of stuff going on, and more attractive when they're when they have a good attitude and they're
Absolutely.
yeah, no question about
I
it.
like to say that we attract more of what we are.
Yeah, good statement. That's the statement of the podcast. That's good. We
There
attract
you
what we
go.
are, and it's true. It's The Secret, right? That book.
Mm.
Yeah,
And so, this became my kind of mission in life. Now, it wasn't quick, right? It was like I spent about 3 months pitching new ideas to potential clients, trying to make things stick, trying to launch podcasts for client companies and things like that.
yeah,
And certain things were going well and certain things weren't. And the things that were going well were seeing people in person, sometimes online, but mostly in person, and working together with them to improve this energy level and improve the direction now. And especially right now, and here in the UK, the economy is going through a really challenging time. It's a really challenging time globally, whether we're talking economically, socially, politically. People, I think, are craving the ability to step into their highest agency selves. Many of the people I work with, because they're ambitious, they've got things they want to do and achieve, and I
right.
bet your audience is similar.
Yeah.
Um, if you are in your own way, you are therefore your biggest enemy because you attract more of what you are.
So is
And
it more
so,
mindset we're talking about?
so I describe it on three levels:
Okay.
skill set, mindset, and heart set.
Okay.
And that essentially breaks down into three levels of what I call energetic fitness at the moment. But essentially, a bit like mental fitness, we've got where is our energy at on three levels. Our skill set is physically how we show up. Mindset is what our state is like, our emotional state. I
Hmm.
often come back to the saying that emotion is emotion, energy in motion.
Hmm.
So if you've got great energy, it means you're in a really positive, useful creation emotional state.
Yeah.
And helping people shift into that. And then the heart set is when we get more into the spiritual level, which is very personal for people. So it depends a bit on who I'm working with. But often we're looking at being present in the moment, being connected to other people, genuinely wanting to connect, and being again in that place of what you described really, which is acceptance of other people, love, passion, excitement. So only wanting to do good work with good people and have that good vibe. And so working with people on those three levels, often in professional environments. So, for example, public speaking, pitching, sales, and negotiation, for example, showing up to that as the most energetic, giving self that you can. And in leadership environments, people who are often stressed, maybe you're, leading a bigger team. I know some entrepreneurs who have raised some money. They're in the tech space. They've raised some money and they get super stressed. They've never had to lead a team this way before. And, if that goes well, the team starts to really like you because you're really personable and you've been with this business since day one. If it doesn't go well, everyone wants you out of that business,
Right.
sometimes to the point where the business fails. Your
Yeah.
VCs kick you out
Yep.
and they can't find a good replacement. The team falls apart. It doesn't work. So
They just move
this can
on.
change your entire career. And so this is where I'm at the moment is working on balancing, delivering to these people. A lot of workshops. And so to give you an example, when you say mindset, it's also bringing in a lot of my hypnosis and
Okay.
NLP kind of
NLP.
experience
Sure.
where I'll be doing meditations for entrepreneurs, for
Hmm.
example, and looking to start running retreats. At the moment, the main thing I am speaking to people about that's full, it's in person here in London, which is a 3 full day intensive training program for your communication and your energy, and getting back into events, but this time not from the operational perspective, running these kind of live training events. This is what a lot of what I'm doing at the moment to try to bring together this professional experience and these challenges, as well as these kind of capabilities and experiences around the skill set, mindset, and heart set pieces.
Right. Well, if you don't have those things lined up and you don't have, project the right kind of energy and things like that, it's going to be hard to get people to invest in you if that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking to do, or the employees to follow you, or people to come on your team to found the company, or whatever that. I mean, I know our context is business. It could be another, same thing could be another context, but I'm sure you're mostly dealing with people in the business space, right?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah, exactly. And what I'll find is, people who have been the most successful have been the people who can inspire other people to join them when
Hmm.
they've got nothing,
Right.
right? I want you to be my co-founder. I want you to be my advisor. I want you to be my first, founding team member. But like, I don't have the money because I haven't raised any money yet,
Right.
or we're not making any money yet, or whatever.
Right.
And sometimes people are so inspired. They're like, I want to join
Oh yeah,
this.
I know guys.
The
I don't know
opposite,
where this guy's going, but I want to be a part
yes,
of it. Like people like that, right?
exactly,
Yeah, I don't get
exactly.
that anybody would follow them, into the depths of figuring out what they're going to do because they've done it
Hmm.
before.
Exactly. And you also have the exact opposite. People who have a lot of experience,
Oh
maybe they
yeah,
have an actual product and they've actually made money from it, something like that. Maybe they're still early on in entrepreneurship, but they've got really tangible things. But man, you just don't know like being around them. Or
yeah,
they talk too much. They talk about themselves too much.
yeah.
They're not
That's
empathetic
common.
or kind enough.
I know.
And man, it kills all your momentum.
Yeah,
The other thing I like to say, because a lot of the work I do ends up being around communication. So these physical manifestations often mean, especially in this age of AI, where what helps you stand out are the very human skills, communicating, being able to relate to other people, holding space, public speaking.
yeah,
um Often what I'm talking to people about here is, you can build the skill sets. I can tell you what your body language needs to do, how to have a more melodic voice so that you sound more persuasive.
right,
But if
exactly.
you show up and you feel like crap, it's not gonna make a difference.
No, people
You're
are
just
gonna
gonna look
feel it.
robotic.
You're just gonna hurt. Yeah, people are gonna be like, I don't. Look, I've been referred, and I continue to get referred people who have inventions and patents and great ideas, and you're like, well, that would change the world, and they just can't raise money. They can't get people to buy into their idea, and I know that the reason is that they don't, project the confidence that
Hmm.
they think, and they just are like, they don't get it. I mean, this would save so much money, and that, yeah, but they don't have confidence in you. They might think the idea is great, but you come with that. So, and they can't raise capital, and they have valuation reports of things worth 15, 20, 40, $50 million.
Yeah.
This concept, right? And it's complicated and whatever. And the only thing they're looking at is, do I have confidence in you, Seven, that
Mm-hmm.
I want to work with you and I think you can pull this off and you got a great attitude and all that kind of stuff? Because at the end of the day, they don't have much else. I mean, valuation reports are all made up.
Yeah, realistically, you're worth nothing until you've actually made the money.
Yeah,
And you're worth whatever you've made. In other words, you're worth whatever you're worth, you as the
yeah,
person, right?
right.
And I think you're so right about this. This is something that I often have to get through first-time founders' heads. I have to kind of beat it into their heads with the stick, which is that you are only worth whatever you are able to prove you are worth. And how are you proving it?
Right.
You prove it in the way you hold yourself, in
Yep.
what you say, in
Yeah.
are you a high agency, high responsibility taker,
Yeah.
right?
It's all
And
confidence. It all is the
mm,
confidence you instill in the people that you're trying to convince to support you.
mhm,
That's it.
and therefore you're worth nothing until you've proven you're worth something. And again, until in this market where people are not always willing to admit their mistakes, their faults, the role they had to play,
Right.
you're therefore worth just about that much, unless you know all the right people or you have some of your own money or whatever. You can kind of brute force some things, but
But
my
that's only
experience is that
that only goes so far. Even when I have
exactly.
people come to me and they say, "No, I know this guy. He's great. He knows me. We grew up together." When really, like you had said before, when the pen hits the paper and you got to document this thing and the check's being written, a lot of that stuff only gets you so far.
Mm,
It doesn't overcome the fact that, you know what, I grew up with you, Seven, and I know you're a great guy, but I don't think you can pull this off. And if I don't have that confidence, it doesn't matter how long I've known you, or I'm just giving you and then I might as well just give you a gift and say, listen, here's $1 million. I don't know what's going to happen, but good luck. And
yeah.
nobody's going to do that. No, nobody. I don't care how rich you are.
What do you find helps people transition from that pen hitting the paper moment to success? At what point, or what needs to happen? What is the right cocktail of things that move someone from, oh, I'm really nervous about this. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, it's getting serious now, and actually figuring things out. And maybe a better way of asking this question is, are there people you know where they probably weren't going to be successful and they make a change of some kind and it works out?
That's a tough question. I would say that I got more examples of the opposite of that, right? Where they
Mm,
have this great idea, they've executed, they've put it all the way through, and it's really hard to get people to pull a trigger. And as a result, I've never had an experience where the startup is they get a check for $5 million from a VC or 10 or $15 million. No, they get 100,000 from somebody here, 250,000, and the check gets bigger and bigger. But and they usually come to me and say, "Boy, this is hard.
mm-hmm.
I got to do that." But I mean, even the guy who started Peloton, I think he had 400 meetings and got 300 small investments to finally get the business off the ground. That's just the reality of it, because as much as people, have confidence in you, they're always hesitant about giving up their money. So I wouldn't say I know of any situation where somebody made a change and it all came together. It just doesn't. It's learning experiences, right? It's blowing it with some people and then I'll tell you what, the ones that I know that have been successful are because they persevere. They
Mm,
don't really accept no for an answer. It's not an if, it's a how, but they go through a lot of learning experiences, failing. I met a guy who was a guest on the podcast. I'd have to look up the episode. And he would go to these VC angel meetings, angels and VCs, right, to raise money. And his goal was to get as many no's, to screw up as many times as he possibly could, to the point at which he couldn't screw up anymore. And he ended
so
up raising
interesting.
$1 million through, I think, originally crowdfunding. And and the companies are successful, got off the ground. But he knew whatever it was going to be, it was going to be wrong the first time. So he went in with that kind of an attitude, and it was just a learning experience for him to grow and grow and grow and grow, to the point at which, first of all, you have two things going for you, right? You've learned and you've grown. Plus, you now have a little bit of a track record. So somebody says, well, Seven got these other guys to invest with him, and he's jumped through these hoops. He dealt with regulatory, whatever the industry you're in, right? He's dealt
Hmm.
with regulatory bodies. They've They've obtained they got approval for the patent. They've done this. They had they've been successful with some of the marketing. They're getting a little traction with sales, and those things start coming together. So it's not just you're able to get past just the confidence stage. I've never been in a situation where somebody, unless they have a huge track record behind them, just get money and support based on, you know, who you are completely. They other things have to come. It's like, emotion. People make emotional decisions, but they still need logic to back it up. It's kind of
Yes,
the same
human
thing.
beings make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally. It's one of my
Correct.
favorite sayings,
True.
and I think this has been what's so pivotal for so many people I've worked with is what I love doing is talking about the why behind
Mhm.
everything. I
Yeah.
love giving people the tools they need to understand and do the things for themselves, so they actually don't need me anymore.
Right.
If someone can understand that everything that we're talking about when it comes to people is their psychology, and you understand the psychology, you understand the why. So why does speaking to someone with open posture and great hand gestures work? Why does kind of looking scared in the corner, why does that not work?
Right.
When you understand the why, which is people like open so that they feel the things that all human beings want to feel:
Feel good.
safe,
Yeah.
comfortable, right?
Exactly.
Understood, respected, trusted. When you can give people these feelings and your energy matches up, now you're moving in a direction where you're working on that emotional level, and then people will find logical reasons to justify
Right.
working
They'll
with you.
find those things.
Exactly. Which is, this is what happened with my previous co-founder, is that exact situation. It was that, but in reverse. Is I was making lots of logical decisions when I had already emotionally figured out that this wasn't right, and I
Right.
didn't listen to the emotion
Right.
because I had made the unconscious emotional decision. I was already probably shifting the way I was working and
Right.
working less
And you
hard
were
and
paying
putting.
attention that they weren't matching up.
Exactly. And in the same way, I noticed my co-founder
Right.
creating challenges where they didn't exist, because I think he knew, all right, it's time for the shares to start coming. And so, problems that didn't exist would become invented all of a sudden because he had already emotionally made a decision and needed the logic to back it up to convince himself. Whereas we probably should have said 2 or 3 months earlier, hey, look, this has been an interesting experiment, but I don't think this is going to work out.
Right.
And that should have happened but didn't. And look, hey, this is what we human beings are like. I think the most powerful tool is being able to look in the mirror and
Yeah.
apply all these things to ourselves. Okay,
Right.
this is how other people work, but guess what? I am other people. I
Right.
am, because I'm a person too. So
Right.
in what way am I self-sabotaging? What do I need? In what ways
Right.
do I work? This is where the meditation sessions for entrepreneurs actually become really interesting.
Right.
I know a therapist for entrepreneurs who might be interesting to put you in touch with, actually, who's based in LA,
Hmm.
LA or San Fran, in California. And um and that is unheard of here. A
Yeah.
therapist specifically for founders, for entrepreneurs. I'm not a therapist, but I do a lot of overlapping work, but I'm not a therapist.
Right.
But here, the therapy culture isn't the same, and there aren't as many entrepreneurs. So you don't get this appreciation for just how impactful stress and other elements of your mental health are, how much we live in ego and anger and
Right.
survival,
Yeah.
and how it's.
Because that's our
I
defensive mechanisms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd argue it's really hard to build a business when you're stuck in that space, though,
Right.
because business is so creative. And creative requires being instead in creation mode.
Yeah.
When you're in a place of creativity and excitement and passion and interest in what you're building, and you really struggle to be in those spaces. I argue it's actually impossible to be in
Yeah.
those spaces when you're in the same moment in a place of fear or anger or too much stress. That just leads to burnout, and we all know you're not creative when you're burnt out.
Yeah. No,
So you've really got to manage yourself.
yeah, I think there's a big difference between being self-aware and being self-conscious, right? Being self-conscious is not a good thing.
Mm,
You're worried about things. You're looking around. Is everybody looking at me? Like, I'm not going to get on the dance floor. They're all going to watch me and whatever. But being self-aware of who you are and being okay with who you are and understanding that, hey, and maybe even listen, I know that this first foray or this new business is going to be challenging. It was challenging before, but that's okay. That from all the people I've spoke to in your business who, use NLP and, mindset coaches and, have the right attitudes and understand the attraction tool and the positive energies and all that kind of stuff. understand that you need to be self-aware, not self-conscious. And I think, and a lot of that comes with experience, like you said, right? Like you failed or you were within a group and it struggled and it didn't work out. You didn't see the signs, but you learned a lot. You learned how to find the signs. You learned what not to, be more cautious about and be aware of what's going on. And then you get into the situation where you still know these things are out there, right? But you're not so afraid of them because you know that they're there. You're looking at the forest and there's wild animals out there, but you see them all. You know where they are. First time in the forest, most people probably get mauled and killed, but you survived. So that's kind of what the metaphor is, right? The next time you do it, and some of this can happen. I'm not telling people that they can just meet you and meet me and learn all these tools and get into business. It's going to be successful the first time. Probably not going to be the case, right? They're probably going to struggle several times. They're probably going to fail and learn and grow. But knowing that it's out there, I think makes your chances of success better. Does that sound right?
I would agree with that, and I love this idea of be self-aware,
Yeah,
not self-conscious.
right.
One of the greatest tools that I've come up with for this is is sort of a leadership saying that I developed after these last co-founder relationships kind of became so challenging, because one of the things that would happen is I would be I would receive from my co-founders, I want, loyalty, I want trust, I want integrity. They wouldn't always show those things.
Right.
And so what I realized was is I have a number of rules for my life, a big list of rules I try to follow. And rule number 41 is, in matters of material, if you
Hmm.
don't ask for it, you don't get it. In matters of character, if you have to ask for it, you don't deserve it.
That's a good statement. 41. How many rules
If I
do you
have
have?
41, it is the 41th. It's the
You have
41st. It's the
41
last one on the
rules?
list. At the
Okay.
moment, there's
Okay.
41 rules.
Okay.
They might need to get trimmed down a little bit, but anyway, at the moment there's 41. But that came about with me understanding that what matters most is the way we show up first. If
Right.
we want to lead on other people, if we want to attract other people to us, like you were
Right.
describing, if we want that investment, or we just even customers, if we want any of these things, what matters most is how we show up first.
Right.
And that is a question of character. There's a saying that I used at my TED talk that I love, which is, be careful of your thoughts because your thoughts become your words.
Yeah.
Be careful of your words because your words turn into your actions. Be careful of your actions because your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits because your habits become your character. Be careful of what character you cultivate because your character creates your destiny.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good. Did you write that or did you get that
I
somewhere?
didn't. I got that from somewhere. I learned that from a Shaolin master named Shi Heng Yi, who's very
Interesting.
active here in Europe.
Yeah.
I think he learned it from someone else. So original quote citation needed, but the point being that, we are the creators of our own destinies. Our unconscious thoughts, words, and actions, therefore, are creating our entire reality.
Of course.
And so at some point we need to go, what reality do I want? And when it comes to matters of character, it's when we consciously, when we have that self-awareness to strip back those thoughts, words, and actions and decide, who do I want to be? That's when we unlock our greatest potential, because we unlock our greatest energy, our greatest magnetism, our greatest presence, and therefore the best relationships, which, again, in this time of AI, are going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And you're right when it comes to character and the way you do things. If you have to ask, that in and of itself is a problem. Well, Seven, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me from London at what 8 o'clock at night. There is that?
No, 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 it's not nearly that late. At this
No, no, no. It's
4:40.
11. So you got 6 hours. I was looking at our
Correct.
time together. It's been 2 hours. Okay. Um, how can people like interact with you and learn from you and see your world and what's going on?
Yeah, amazing. Well, Mitch, look, thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat, and
You're
I've
welcome.
loved this and loved hearing from you. When I'm in New York, I want to bring you on my podcast because this has
Please
been
let me.
great.
I'm available.
Um, I can be most easily reached at the moment on LinkedIn and
Okay.
Instagram, but I'm probably most active at the moment on Substack. I write a weekly Substack, and also a podcast that comes out a couple of times a week on average. So please connect with me on those places. I'd
We'll
love
put
to
links
see
in the
you.
show notes.
Um, And I'm very active in person here in London. So if you have any listeners in London, but also always up for an online conversation. Mitch, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, stick around. We'll go to credits, and then we'll wrap things up. In addition to being a podcast host, I'm also a small business attorney, mostly providing legal services in New York and New Jersey. At my firm, we help small businesses, entrepreneurs, family-owned businesses with things like contract drafting, corporate governance, purchases of businesses, sales of businesses, tax planning, real estate, and even estate planning. With over 3 decades of experience, we can handle most transactional issues. So if you're watching the show and you encounter some sort of legal issue, reach out to us. You can connect with us and visit our website, beinhakerlaw.com. There you can read our law blog, Insights legal blog, and you can set up a free consultation. If you want to connect, I'm on all the platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and the others. So as a lawyer, I'm here if you need me. As a podcaster, thanks for tuning into the show and for continuing to support us.